All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday. Happy Merry Christmas, whatever you want to say. But I thought we'd just come on and do a little recording. I honestly did not plan on it, but I was going to begin sorting things and organizing and taking things to storage, and I got that feeling that I'm sure we all get. Gosh, this is difficult. How am I going to categorize and organize all of these different things? And so then I came over here by the computer and found the poinsettia, of course, and I realized that you can see that, it's dropped this little yellow stuff off of the flowering areas onto our book here, The Wisdom of Dr. David R. Hawkins, what we've been reading on Tuesdays for some time now. So I thought maybe we can grab our CLC paint brush. Here's a little wild. And we can brush this off to the side over here. Making sure not to get that in the tea. There. There. But anyways, thanks for joining me. Thanks for being here. This is a little random, out of the ordinary, not so normal recording, but what I was just talking about, that feeling that we get when we're trying to do something and we're like overwhelmed or if it's too much for us. Also, got this new microphone here that we're trying out, so we'll see how the difference in audio quality is with that, ladies and gentlemen. Because all we've had for many years is this little webcam up here and its built-in microphone within it. That was very cheap too. It was only like 30 bucks. But so once again, it's nice to be here rambling with you, whoever is listening on this December 26th of 2023. We're now 5 days past the winter solstice. But chapter 5 here today is entitled Surrender, if you can see that. And I thought that would be fitting because it's not really things at all that are difficult, but it's our thoughts of them. It's like the old Wayne Dyer teacher. He says, somebody asked me, well, Mr. Dyer, what are the blocks to my happiness? And he said, there are no blocks, but your only blocks are the belief that there are, or that you do have blocks. And so it is not that things are difficult, it is just our belief that it is difficult. And then you have to ask yourself, what is it that you do believe is difficult? And then how could you begin to change your perspective on that, your position, the way that you're looking at it? And so we come to chapter 5 in the Wisdom of Dr. David R. Hawkins, Classic Teachings on Spiritual Truth and Enlightenment. Also got a new chair, getting used to that. A little different, ladies and gentlemen, but not bad. In this chapter, he says, we move beyond specific spiritual obstacles to perhaps the greatest challenge that faces any spiritual seeker: the willingness to surrender. I'll say to let go, to stop trying to force and control. And it's when we are able to do that, ladies and gentlemen, that we begin to do what it was we were trying to do when we were previously forcing. It's so interesting, the paradoxical way of how when we're trying to control, it gives us all that stress and, anxiety and anger, frustration, whatever you want to call it. And then when we release and allow and stop trying to control and just let things be the way that they are, maybe that's when we can experience that much, much greater peace in our lives. Ladies and gentlemen, this sounds like it would be easy, after all. To surrender means to let go and to not have to do anything. What could be easier? In truth, the process of surrendering is one of the most difficult steps along the path to enlightenment because the tentacles of the ego. So, the greatest challenge that faces any spiritual seeker, the willingness to surrender everything, including the payoffs of the ego, to God, to Atum, to the universe, to the Tao, grand organized design, great spirit, whatever you want to call it. I'm liking the Tao and the Force lately. However, because of the tentacles of the ego, it becomes one of the most difficult steps in this process of trying to, become a more enlightened man or woman, human being, ladies and gentlemen. So I thought it would be fitting with the feelings today to attempt to have our spiritual lesson like normal. And so, chapter 5, Surrender, he continues in the preface to this chapter. Even among the most spiritually inclined are deep and firmly entrenched these tentacles of the, of quote unquote tentacles of the ego, or the grips and the firm hold that the ego has on our subconscious mind and our, you know, lives. However, after reading this chapter, he says, you'll see why a commitment to this surrendering process is more than commensurate with the demands. Interesting. The willingness, he begins, to surrender the payoff of the ego allows you to let everything go experientially as it arises. The willingness to surrender the payoff of the ego. What is the payoff of the ego? That feeling like you are superior, or, oh yeah, I got ahead, I did better, I gained more status. Now, this could be very confusing because, I mean, isn't it a good thing to feel good? Yeah, like I'm doing a good job. But I guess there are ego ways to take that. This payoff of the ego, the willingness to surrender that, allows us to let everything go experientially as it arises. This includes the payoff of grief, anger, resentment, hatred. With surrender, you have to choose. Now, like, those don't sound like payoffs. This includes the payoff of grief, anger, resentment, or hatred. So maybe like when somebody, because of the ego, when somebody doesn't do something that when you want to control and force, and when it is difficult, and so the ego goes, ah, dang it, I want to get angry, and it's like, that's why I started this video. That's when I started recording. I was like, I could skip the recordings for this week and say, okay, we're doing, a week off for the holidays or whatever. But, I think I needed to surrender here, ladies and gentlemen. And take it easy and allow things to be the way that they are. And then when I can do that and stop trying to force and control, maybe I will actually make some real progress in the correct direction rather than making rash decisions. I've been needing to move that table there in the background for some time. But there's a lot of things, my painting stuff and certain journals and whatnot. Other things you could just simply toss. But it takes some thought. And we were having that opportunity where This includes the payoff of grief, anger, resentment, or hatred when things aren't the way that you want them to be. You want to control and have reality be exactly the way you want it to be. But with surrender, Dr. David R. Hawkins continues, you have to choose. What is it that we have to choose, ladies and gentlemen? Got this really good Salada green tea, pomegranate acai or acai. Is that how that? I always thought it was pronounced acai, ACAI, but I guess it's acai. Anyways, that's aside the point. Ladies and gentlemen, hope you got yourself a beverage and are comfy. Tea soothes the soul, and soothing pleasures are the best. Shout out to my mom. I love you. Hope you're doing well. Even though we just talked on the phone yesterday. And shout out to everybody else here that is one of my great supporters and followers. Bang Chief, A1, and many others. Anana. I know I'm missing a couple. Who's the one? Ian, forgetting the last name. But the willingness, see, with surrender, you have to choose. What do you surrender to God in the way of surrender? What does devotion mean? You know, you'll hear things like, I love thee, O Lord, greater than. I love thee. I love the glee I get out of my hatreds, my wickedness, my shame, my guilt, my revenge. It's a weird sentence. Either you love God or you love revenge, is the point. And you can see this in people. And I don't think it's honestly their fault. I think it's a subconscious behavioral feedback pattern loop that we create through, like what you practice to do. This is why I'm always talking about striving versus arriving. And if we can practice being here and arriving and appreciating, then that's what we'll know how to do because we've practiced it. So it goes from a conscious action to a repeated conscious action, and then you begin to create a feedback loop with your subconscious to eventually you're doing things without having to put very much effort into it at all, and sometimes almost not even doing it knowing that you're thinking about it. And we all have perfect examples for small habits like this in our lives until eventually it just becomes a subconscious loop. And then you have to consciously, thinking about it, do something else in order to stop this pattern. In other words, practice doing something else. And so we can either love ourselves and life and reality and the universe despite, this makes me think of something I seen in one of John Levi's older videos. Recently, he's talking about this picture. Let me see if I can pull it up for us here. Here we go. This is just experimental. See, back in the beginning, I used to be afraid to share things because I wasn't sure, what you could share, but it seems like a lot of people can share a lot of stuff. So for purposes of teaching commentary and expanding the mind, we're going to be looking at the vinegar tasters. Oh yeah, watch out. Wikipedia can't be sold. Maybe later, although, oh my goodness. Let's focus on the subject here. Now, the vinegar tasters. Now see, in this picture here, we have the three vinegar tasters depicting Confucius, Buddha, and Lao Tzu over a pot of vinegar, respectively perceiving it as sour, bitter, and sweet. Now, this shows us the different perspectives that we can have on reality. Now, I forget exactly. Okay, let's just go ahead and. The allegorical image represents three elderly men. The identity of three men varies. Chinese versions of three men do. We like the Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. The three men are dipping their fingers in a vat of vinegar. So we have Confucius, Buddha, and Lao Tzu here. And one man reacts. So each man's expression represents predominant attitude of their philosophy. And this is what we're all about here on the channel is spiritual philosophy, seeking to achieve and maintain happiness through a greater understanding, a greater awareness of the nature of our reality so that we can increase the quality of our experience. Now, see if we can get a wow, look at that. That's cool. That's cool. Now, so Confucianism saw life as sour. And Confucius in this picture is giving the depiction of a sour face, in need of rules to correct the degeneration of people. Buddhism saw life as bitter, with the Buddha dominated, his philosophy dominated by pain and suffering due to the attachment of possessions and material desires. Remember the whole philosophy, no desire, no suffering. So less desires equal less suffering, which is great. However, I believe I love the most Lao Tzu's version of this due to the attachment. And Taoism saw life as sweet due to it being fundamentally perfect in its natural state. And so this is an example of what I was thinking of before this randomly popped into my head, thanks to John Levi from a previous video. But so, since the three men are gathered around one vat of vinegar, the three teachings are one. In Chinese philosophy, the three teachings are Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. All of these three teachings are considered a harmonious aggregate. I've never heard this. I'm so glad we got to this today, ladies and gentlemen. The three teachings, let's just come over to the three teachings here. Common understanding, three teachings, reference Sanyi teaching, a syncretic sect which is founded during the Ming Dynasty, wherein Confucianism, Taoist, and Buddhist beliefs are combined according to their usefulness in self-cultivation or personal cultivation, the development of one's mind capacities through one's own efforts. This is beautiful. I didn't expect this to go here. We're just randomly inspired. Oh my gosh. Wow, the Hanging Temple, which contains Taoist, Buddhist, and Confucian deities and halls. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this. Look at this. And what's very interesting about this is how this whole mountainside, look, this is like a structure in this mountainside here. Looks like it's rounded at the top. All this seems to be brick with these little holes, little windows, looking somewhat very natural. But then we have these massive walls down here, leading the steps up to just this beautiful Eastern design, just beautiful. Wow. And so this is a dedication of these three teachings combined, which I never had any idea about. Ladies and gentlemen, three teachings harmonious as one. The three teachings, harmonious as one, simply reflect the long history, mutual influence, and, at times, complementary teachings of the three belief systems, Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. Ladies and gentlemen, literally, back to the 6th century, the term may also refer to a non-religious philosophy built on that aggregation. That's so beautiful. Because, I mean, this goes back, let me stop the share there. This goes back to, the idea. I had no clue we were going here today, but back in these times, a long time ago, when there wasn't the religious dogmatic separation, but there was a mixing of all of the great schools of thought, and they were harmonized to get the best out of each of them. So we were just talking about Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, but then also Pythagoreanism and the Chaldean oracles, the Greek myths, the Platonic and Stoic philosophy, Judaism, mystic Christianity and Greek mystery schools, Zoroastrianism, astrology, alchemy, ancient Egyptian philosophy, spirituality, and much, much more, ladies and gentlemen. It was a global connection, and we had a much greater understanding. And we weren't compartmentalized down into little tiny groups, so we could become enlightened men and women. Either we can choose. Either you can love God, everything we've just discussed, or you can love revenge. I don't know what got me on that tangent that took us so far away from our teaching of surrender today, but I guess it was relative. Once again, hope you get value, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you get value. But let us continue. Either you love God or you love revenge. You can't have both. Either you love God or you love self-pity. It's always really a choice. Am I willing to surrender this for the love of God or not? To become enlightened, that power has to be strong. You have to be willing to give up everything for that which you are a part of. But as like a drop in the ocean or a cell in the body, the whole is much greater than the sum of its parts, maybe. You have to be willing to give up your attempt to control. That's where it goes back to the bitter, the sour, and the sweet. Because that third perspective, this is what John Levi was saying, that third perspective sees that reality is what it is. And our attempt to control or categorize or force it is kind of illusory or an illusion. And it's just kind of this allowing. Like there will be difficulties in life, and there will be overwhelming things, whether it's the simplest, thing as sorting and categorizing and organizing things, or much greater difficulties that we go through. But it is all part of the oneness and duality of life. I mean, I was just reading in the previous chapter, the last page of the chapter we did last week, in the section entitled Inner Calling and Inner Genuineness in Obstacles to Spiritual Growth. And I hope this microphone's working well. It seems kind of close here, so we will see if this recording was crazy loud or not. However, I guess you can always turn down the volume. I was just reading that which is created by God. You can't say that one creation of God is better than another if it's all part of the same thing. The inner worth of every human being is infinite. Its potential is infinite. And so when we can come from this viewpoint, it's like the old koan where the neighbor comes to the Zen master and says, oh, you've had a son, how lucky and wonderful. And he goes, we'll see. And then the son, years later, breaks his leg, and the gentleman, says, oh, how terrible. And it's like, well, we'll see. And then the army comes and can't take his son because his leg is broken. And the neighbor says, wow, how lucky and wonderful and blessed you are. And he says, we'll see. And it continues on, and it's always this roller coaster of bitter and sweet and up and down, but it's kind of in between. And this was, I think, the perspective of Lao Tzu, to see that it is always just in between, and then have the ability to take that as all right. And so, if we can begin to see ourselves that we are all a part of this creation, then we can't say that any one thing is better than another. All are equally creatures of God. So this is the transformation you go through. David Hawkins is saying this now. He gives us the example. Let's say you walk down the street and you see a little black beetle on his back, flailing around, flailing his legs around, and you see others walking past it. You can tell you're making spiritual progress when it bothers you. You turn the little beetle on his feet and then you walk away happy. At that point, you realize you are loving life and yourself and all that you are connected to. I added that little bit about yourself and what you're connected to. David Hawkins continues, quote, "You're discerning the sacredness of life because his little beetle life is just as sacred to him." And he puts it so you're sent by the universe, by God, to turn him over and say, well, God, I'm turning over this little beetle because I know you want me to. And then he puts in parentheses, you can joke around a little bit with God, the universe, Atum, Tao, grand organized design, whatever you call it. And he says, I do that all the time. There's a point where you can't just walk by the beetle without helping it. Then he says there's an even higher space, and to me this is confusing and paradoxical, but makes sense. A different level of consciousness in which the beetle's karma is the beetle's karma and yours is yours. So interfering would be to mess up. And I did that trying to save a caterpillar, and then it just fell into the river anyways. And I was like, my. But who knows? Maybe it went down the stream and was just fine, hopefully. This is spiritual philosophy, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot take it too seriously. And we're trying to let go and not control and force and allow and just be here now, like Ram Dass says. So you become a servant of that great force, which we are a part of, when you see the intrinsic holiness of all of life and you try to preserve it as best as you can, because that's how God reflects through you. It's how we are reflecting from source. To become enlightened, that power has to be strong. You have to be willing to give up your attempt to push, to control, to, all these ego demands. And we have to begin to allow and accept things as they are and appreciate them, even when we think it is far, far from order and control in the way that we would hope to see it. But once again, that goes back to perspective and gratitude and appreciating. And so I'm going to be thankful for all that I have and all that I am. This is a great mantra, I think, for all of us. Actually, this gives me an opportunity to test look. I was going to say test the sound for doing meditations, because I like to do that. My previous camera on the webcam wouldn't pick it up, though. It would go quiet after the same tone for a moment. And so he references meditation here a little bit further. He says, in the beginning, the ego identifies with form. How does the ego know that? Because it registers through recognition. You'll notice that there isn't any me that's thinking anyway. There is a watcher or experiencer. So in meditation or in contemplation, if we focus on the field, we will notice that witnessing is happening of its own accord. And so I lost the reason I was going to begin to test this method. To be willing to, and I mean everything, because it's the last moment before that ultimate experience reveals itself or condition takes over, rather, you will be asked to surrender your life. Oh yeah, the mantra. And being appreciative. So the mantra is, I appreciate and I am thankful. Think simply, I am thankful for all that I have, all that I am, and all that will continue to flow into my life, no matter how great or small that is. Because we all, whether we all have desires and hopes and dreams and much greater things and situations that we wish that we could control and have it be different than the way that it is. And so our lesson today for myself and anyone who's joining me, but mostly for myself, is the ability of letting go, surrendering. And like always, I have no clue what I'm going to title this video. But let's take a deep breath through the nose and let it out with a ah, ah. That sound alone triggers chemicals in the brain and the body to make you feel better. And then we're going to do an ah with the out breath. Ah. One more. Ah. I am thankful for all that I have, all that I am, and all that continues to flow into my life, and all that will continue. And then the sound of thankfulness. Oh, the Om. But at least for me, and I mean, I just got that from Wayne Dyer, the meditations for manifesting, that he called it the japa meditation that he learned from a very interesting teacher, I guess you could put it. But I find very fascinating about that the feelings you get from the sounds and that opportunity that was mentioned by Dr. David Hawkins there in meditation to begin to notice, that there's a watcher and a experiencer, a witnessing that we are that can allow us to have this new perspective. Now, let me go back and we'll do a little bit more here before we finish up. In the beginning of this section of surrender, I just don't like it when the terms like surrender everything to God, because people take that the wrong way. We are talking about a great force that we are all a part of, once again, like cells in a body or drops of water in the ocean. There isn't different waters. I mean, there's cups of water and bottles of water and rivers and raindrops and lakes and seas and oceans. But there was all just one water. So when sentences like surrender, and lay down and all of these things for God, do not take that in the dogmatic religious way that we hope that any of us here are beyond. We can see beyond the indoctrination attempts of the, empires of the times. However, I'll just continue with the words of David R. Hawkins here for a minute and try not to interrupt, ladies and gentlemen. But once again, hopefully you're getting value. And if you are, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. The ego is a very fascinating character. The more we can learn about it and discover about it, the more progress and more peace and happiness and joy we can have in our life. And so, this is because the last moment before that ultimate experience reveals itself, or condition takes over, rather, you will be asked to surrender. The core of what you think is your life, the core of the ego, the self, the real, in italics, you lay down that for God, for universe, for that which we are a part of. It's scary because you need to let go of all of this payoff. And you look at all this stuff. Now, suddenly there's an infinite presence that is like yourself, what you think is yourself. And this one too lies down. And there's a moment of terror, and you experience death while you are still alive, I'll add. That's the old story of dying while you are still alive, or transitioning to being in the world but not of it. I think of the parrot story, but that's for a different time. Man, it's so hard for me to read and not ramble. I'll continue. If you want to hear the parrot story, leave me a comment. It's a good one, and I'll make sure to do a real quality version of it. No, you're not going to actually die. This is what people refer to as ego death. But you may experience this. There's only one death. You never experience it again, but there is one death you will live through. You don't know that you're going to live through it. The ego has the notion that it's going to be the same, only enlightened. I'll still be me, but I'll be the enlightened me. No, you aren't going to be you. It's my responsibility, Dr. David R. Hawkins says, to prepare you for the last moment. Because everybody here is going to be headed for the last moment. Unless you hear the truth, you won't know what to do. Therefore, karmically, I am laying down that I have spoken the truth. At that last moment you will get, quote, walk straight ahead no matter what. As you lay down your life, the agony of this ego death arises. And then before you stands the splendor. That what you thought, this part is deep for me too, so if you're not getting it, I'm right there with you. I mean, I'm getting it, but he's wording it weird here. He's really putting an intense focus on the whole death part of this, and he's talking metaphorically here about letting go of our persona and our force and controlling and allowing and surrendering to that what is. Going back to the sweet and the bitter and just seeing as whatever arises. You can see it as suffering. You could see it as there's these different philosophies that you put together give us a much greater understanding of the whole and the one. So that what you thought was your life was not life anyways, because when you have this new perspective, but because it is so real, you see why you've guarded it all these lifetimes. It's so convincingly real that it is your life. That reminds me of the Bill Hicks. It's just a ride. Thrills and chills and funny colors and ups and downs. And we begin to think that it's real. We say, this has got to be real. My bank account, my worries, the control that I'm trying to have, and the forcing and the difficulties, rather than surrender and allowing. But it's just a ride. And sometimes people try to remind us that. And what do? We get rid of those people, unfortunately, so often. But we need more of them. That's why I'm here. Hopefully, that's why you're where you are, ladies and gentlemen, being the change you want to see, because that is the source to our life. The ego is very, very strong, or it wouldn't have survived all of these lifetimes. Like we've said, it's very good for keeping a species alive, survival instinctual programming. However, at this last moment, it tells you, or you feel that it's the very source of your life that you're laying down. At that point, I'm telling you, he says, it's safe to surrender. It is safe, but you have to have a knowingness that it's safe. And this goes back to a teaching that Dr. Wayne Dyer spends a lot of time on, is having this certainty and this knowing. And where does it come from? And how can we create that within ourselves to have a strength and a certainty and a knowing within ourselves as we do this process and trusting in that which we have originated from and are a part of, trusting in your divinity and your source, and having this knowingness that it's safe. You have to have heard it. You have to know it. Conscious contact, you have to have it in your aura, he says. That's pretty mystical. And then out of nowhere, it comes to you and you walk right through. The Zen's saying to walk in fear no matter what got me through it, no matter what, means without limitation. Even to death itself, no matter what. I repeat the words of the Master who I followed at that moment. No matter what. As you surrender, as you're willing to let go, you'll see the ego hangs on. Once again, we're talking about changing our mind and our perspectives here, going from forcing and trying to control to allowing. But I guess it makes more sense to describe it as, to describe it as death of the ego. I just think that's a grim way to describe this understanding. As you surrender, you are willing to let go. You'll see the ego hangs on because it's getting something out of it. Now, everybody's ego is going to resist this. Expect it to. The old ego says this hatred is justified. To give up self-pity, to give up anger, to give up resentment, to surrender them through forgiveness. The power of A Course in Miracles is the willingness to forgive all and get out of the lower fields of consciousness. The one thing I remember Wayne Dyer always referencing from the Course is infinite patience produces immediate results. Because you're no longer waiting. So if we have an infinite patience, we will be met with immediate results. And that goes back to the very reason I started this video, to have patience, to be appreciative, and to not try to force and control, and to also not have a negative viewpoint on all the things that you do want to control and have be a different way, and or that it's going to be difficult. For my simple example, I was going to begin organizing and going through the many piles of things that there are to try to figure out what needs to go into storage over there, and what needs to go here and there. And I was like, starting to get frustrated and overwhelmed. And I want to share that with you because I'm always sharing the spiritual material, and I'm just like any one of us, ladies and gentlemen. It's a daily practice for us to begin to remember or remind ourselves often. So, get ready to step off the ego path, ladies and gentlemen, onto a more rewarding, fulfilling, and service-oriented journey of enlightenment. And I think for today, we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there and see how this sounds in the premiere. And I always thank those of you who join me in the premieres. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Let's see here if I can minimize this window. You cannot minimize Zoom when you're recording. Okay, let's not do that then. Let's not do that then. But let's go ahead and go back here. Back there. I'm gonna open up YouTube here in my channel, just so I can give a shout out to some of you wonderful followers. I appreciate you so much. It means the world to me that you would spend your time here with me. 1,545 subscribers. It's just ridiculous, but amazing. I mean, what I mean by ridiculous is I can't believe that many people are getting enough value to click the subscribe button. No, don't switch accounts. View your channel. There we go. I was trying to go to YouTube Studio. Where is that? There we go. Clicking the right buttons, hopefully, ladies and gentlemen. So, David Stanley left a bunch of comments, but he says Mr. Hawkins is mistaken. Everything is true, but not everything is truth. Hmm, it's a good perspective. It's a good perspective. View more. Audio Hope says, I'm a new subscriber. Love your videos so far. I just wanted to say I appreciate what you're doing with this knowledge. Grateful to find and listen to individuals as yourself. I'm going to give that a heart. Thank you so much. I love and appreciate you. Thoth. Marco Conception 840 comments Thoth, Naboo, Hermes, Mercury, Odin, Raphael. Interesting. Connections there, possibly? Audio Hope again. Let's keep going down. Rock Me 1977 comments here and says Thoth equals thought, Jesus equals word. Our thoughts, words, and actions are the only thing we can control. Have good/God thoughts in the mind, the language of love, and we provide the body, put it to action, or bring God to life. Love that. And then Audio Hope responds. It's funny, I haven't even seen these names before now, but I guess they are here with us. Terry Jones is one I recognize there. Says, I enjoy your ramblings very much. Please continue. Glad you like them, and I will try. Just gonna do a TY here since we are recording. We give that a heart. But let's see, go back to what was being. A lot of people have difficult time with their thoughts. It's the struggle. I mean, that's why I'm here. This was a funny one. It says, just a word will do. I'll sort the rest with Matt. I'm like, who's Matt? What does that comment mean? I think it's out of place. This one says, thank you, Jesus. I think a lot of people get a kick out of the fact that I might possibly look like Jesus, but I don't know. There's so many interpretations of whether that character even existed. And so all I know is it's the message that is the most important part. The message, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to give a shout out to some of you that, that are here most often. I'm seeing a lot of new names, though. Santori Roberts, Beat Rays. Beat Rays looks like a familiar one. The Egyptian language has a resonance with the sound of a word that has a meaning of it as well. See, that's why I'm so into those sound meditations, the ah. And when you look at Ra and Amun Ra and Thoth and all of these different, Viracocha and Buddha and Krishna, Rama, it's always God. It's always this ah sound, the sound of creation. And that makes me think very randomly of a connection to what was the book series where the lion creates the world, Narnia? And the lion, what was his name? Aslan, with the A. And even he is a creation deity, and he sung the world into creation with the sound of his voice. I don't know, random connections there. Thank you so much, Beat Rays. Sun is quote unquote sound, and I am in Galatian, he says. So very good stuff there. Beat Rays, thank you so much. Nature of reality, levels of consciousness. Just looking for, there's Terry Jones again. Tim Beck. God is life itself. Huh. Some Jesus reference there, Christ. It's all good. It's all good if you're still there. We're all growing through different, and we all have our different. If it brings you peace and happiness and more enlightenment in your life, the Hermetist, Mr. Merkabastic. Wow, Gorilla Press from 4 months ago. Wishing Gorilla Press healing, health, comfort, peace, and well-being and good vibes. We haven't heard from Gorilla Press since about 4 or 5 months ago when her house burned down, and it's just such an unfortunate. I mean, that would really be the ultimate test for us, ladies and gentlemen. That makes me want to go to more recent videos and check out. Maybe we can do this from my channel. I'm just messing around now here if you're still here on the video. So thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen. I love and appreciate you. But I just wanted to kind of go through some of the comments here in our videos. But let's see. 3.5. Bunch of different. Let's do a mute here. See if we can bring this video up of myself. Let's see how weird it would be to do a share screen of just that, ladies and gentlemen. Can we do just that? On we are here. Who are we? Who are we, ladies and gentlemen? Here we got Audio Hope going on. Rock Me 77, Bang Chief, Rosarin 77, User HW, Marco Conception again, the Y. So just giving a shout out to a few of you guys. Thank you so much. Love and appreciate you. I'm not seeing Anan and Anana, but they're always in the premieres. And so we'll stop the share there. All right. Love and appreciate each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for spending time with me here today. Hopefully you got some kind of value out of this. And we will see you tomorrow for our Wednesday wisdom, diving deeper into the lost wisdom of the pharaohs and hermetics and the corpus hermeticum, the divine Pymander. And we are on part number 2 of the common mind to Tot. All right, ladies and gentlemen, love you, appreciate you. We'll see you tomorrow. Be the change. Wait, no, I got to finish this correctly. Remember that there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. But before we say that, remember to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through a greater awareness and understanding of the nature of our reality, so that through that awareness, we can increase the quality of our lives. And remember to seek to discover the mysteries of our history and the lost wisdom of the ages. And also, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. It is what we must bring to life. So that all the things we've been telling ourselves, oh, when I get there and have that much, and becomes irrelevant, because then we are there. All right. Be sure to expand the description to get this for yourself, to put it on your shelf, as well as a link to my Etsy shop and my landscape paintings and C60 Purple Power, the most powerful antioxidant known to man. Give yourself the gift of health, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Be the change you want to see. Oh, there it is.